Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us on Newsnight. And we are getting a lot of your feedback regarding your potential wish list for the new government. And I'm reading some of your messages. 22422 is the SMS line and the hashtag is Newsnight. These are some of your tweets this evening. All right, we are going to put them up just behind me. Okello Mwalimu, you say, today's inauguration heralds a new dawn in the management of Kenya's affairs. It marks the beginning of the making of President Ruto's legacy. As I urge fellow Kenyans to respect and accept the regime, I'd equally urge the new sheriffs to treat all regions equally. Okay, thank you, Okello Mwalimu, for that. It's Kipleting, you say, it's a new era of President Dr. William Ruto's regime. Millions of Kenyans have hopes that the new administration will urgently address issue of fuel prices, cost of living, unemployment, public debt, and the fight against corruption. Thank you, it's Kipleting, for that. All right, Danson Kuruna, you say food is a key driver of inflation and the high cost of living. The idea that the government can decide to do nothing during one of the worst food crises is not tenable. Something should be done and must be done fast. This may have been a reaction to something one of my guests said. We'll talk about that. Engineer Lazaro, you say our young democracy is maturing. We are now looking upon the new administration to implement their campaign pledges without witch hunt and revisiting of past events. Okay, those are good messages. Thank you. I'm also seeing SMSs on 22422. You don't give us your name, but you say, let the new government sincerely pay all pending bills to grow the economy. Let the words on pending bills be followed by actual payment. Then somebody else, no name, please tell us your name and where you're writing in from. They say they are not telling us how they are going to deal with corrupt governors, and I guess corruption in the counties. And keep sending your messages in. I'll read them even as we continue. Joy, I don't know if any of those messages have stood out. I'm seeing you vigorously scribbling as I read them. Go ahead.
Yes, I just a reaction to some of these good things that they talked about. They could be double-edged. The pending bills, the issue of the KRA not harassing business people. It is two-edged in that, for example, KRA is after chasing you to pay your debt, and a lot of people don't want to pay debts. People will borrow money and they don't want to pay, leave alone money payable to the government. People will try not to pay. That is where now KRA comes in. I think what is important here is to enable or to allow to have policies that enable KRA do their job while at the same time remaining within the law. Because when you talk about harassment, it's harassment from whose perspective? Because at the end of the day, government is relying on that. Issues of pending bills, I agree, a lot of businesses are not, a lot of genuine people who have done work for government have not been paid. But we're also aware that people supply air to government, that some of those bills are questionable. Much as we want them to be paid, we also want to be sure that Kenyans are getting value for money. How are they scrutinizing these bills to ensure that only genuine bills whereby goods were actually supplied and supplied in an honest value for money way process are paid? So that at the end of the day, we know that if we just open it up like blanket like that, we are going to be undermining the same economy that we want to protect. So I think we need to be a little bit cautious on how we do these exciting things that you're saying.
So you don't expect a blanket check for 500 billion?
No, I shouldn't. I want value for money. I want value for money for this country.
Speaking of value for money, Professor Witi, did you hear any wealth creation ideas coming out today from that speech?
Well, there was the support for micro and small and medium enterprises. And I think on the whole question, and talking about safe and respectable environments for doing business, that is creating stalls and all of this, making sure that you do not delegitimize enterprise. Now that's one part. But I think at this point, I would think about it as just the headlines. I don't see the details in terms of what the government is exactly going to do. You talked about releasing this money to support micro, small and medium enterprises. The devil is in the details in terms of how that's going to be executed. Who's going to get what, when, and where, and across the entire universe of these kinds of businesses, how are you going to prioritize who gets what? And how is this going to be channeled? How are we going to use devolution, for instance, to arrive at a determination of who gets what and where? The other one is about agriculture, because the economy really kind of rests on the backbone of agriculture. And I say this again, in the campaign period and in the presidential debate season, the two candidates were absolutely lofty in their imaginations of, and in a very narrow sense, that all you need to fix agriculture is to throw hybrid seed and fertilizer to the soil. It is much more complicated than that. The agricultural sector growth and transformation strategy that was done by this government under Kiunjuri's leadership, who is now an ally of President Ruto, basically said that we have no basis for even making fertilizer recommendations because we have not done credible soil testing to begin with. So now I see this 1.4 million bags of fertilizer or tons of fertilizer, and I'm wondering who's going to go to get what and where and what kind of fertilizer. Because we have DAP, we have calcium ammonium nitrate, we have urea fertilizers, and we have NPK blends and all of that. Now the question is, what's going to go where? And during this short season, as we said in the beginning, a lot of this is going to tea plantations. These are wealthy people. And then we are at the tail end of the growing season. So there's going to be a small fraction of fertilizer, and he's basically said he's going to work with county governments to make sure the distribution, and he's basically said Eastern, Central, and Western Kenya, kind of the breadbasket areas of the country. Now, those are the places where the soils are most hammered. We talk about severe degradation of soil, where the soils actually, even the fertilizer response is extremely low because the organic carbon structure of the soil is basically depleted. So you throw soils, you throw fertilizer, and basically there's just very little response. So the yield response that is commensurate to the fertilizer application is actually out of work. And you're basically going to be throwing fertilizer into the soil, and most of it is going to go into the water systems. So again, this is where we want the government in the next few years, in the next few months, to go back to existing strategy. And it goes back to the questions that the Deputy President Gachagua was raising, saying that there's no system. There's actually a strategy that points out some of the critical problems. So now you're going to throw a lot of money. And my other question is, the president was very clear today that he is ending subsidies. They're costing a whooping 144 billion that we can't afford. I get that. But now you're saying that you're cutting subsidies in petroleum, and you're cutting that completely, but you're moving the subsidy to something else called fertilizer. And we know very, very well, and my friend David Dean knows this extremely well, the subsidies especially in agricultural inputs, has failed. Tegemeo has done a lot of work on this one. And there is there's tomes of studies that show that input subsidies have just not worked. They've not delivered the requisite yield response that we expect on the other side.
Have the studies shown why they have?
The studies have shown why, because first is the inefficiencies in distribution. Now, if you look at fertilizer, for instance, one is, why is fertilizer expensive in Kenya? It is because of the port handling inefficiencies. The demurrage costs is number one. And then the transportation cost, the bad roads, and then the warehouse costs and all of that. And then you have all of the corruption that happens in the middle in terms of the distribution part. And in Nigeria, it was proved that only 1/3 of subsidized fertilizer actually reached farmers at the price that was prescribed by government. And Malawi now is in serious problems with fertilizer subsidy. They can't afford it. At some point, the Minister for Agriculture basically scrapped them. The president, in a panic, basically restricted them. Sri Lanka is collapsing because they just can't now afford fertilizer subsidies anymore. So there are ways to reimagine agricultural transformation that goes way beyond just hybrid seed and fertilizer. He's talking about responding to climate change. There's smart agriculture. There is agroecological approaches that basically reduce the use of fertilizer, that basically harness the synergies that come out of integrated livestock and crop management systems. Now, our farms are very small. They're actually the right places to test some of these innovative ideas in terms of reducing reliance and dependence on fertilizers that come out of fossil fuels that are too expensive. and come from global supply chains that are often uncertain, especially when you have global pandemics and the war in Ukraine, for instance. So I think over the next few months, we want to see more details. Now, one last point is CBC. He's actually recommended an education review task force. And I'm sure parents are now panicking a lot about what's going to happen. Now, the problem is that you're just going to be, it's a pendulum, it's a yin and yang. And the question is, what's going to happen to the kids who are going to grade 6? He's basically said that this surge that will lead to about 2.5 million kids getting into school in January, he says he's going to help manage that process smoothly. But he's also saying, on the other hand, that we will have to revisit, to use President Uhuru's words, CBC. Now, I hope we don't throw away the baby with the bathwater, that we take a very respectful and cautious look at this, because this came actually during Kibaki's time. The CBC agenda was Professor Diambo. It did not start during President Kenyatta's time. So they were just basically trying to implement it. Now, the faults and the flaws of 844 did not really, in the first instance, warrant a total overhaul of the system. What it required was basically to really understand the critical inputs into the education system that we have not invested in. One is teachers, facilities, and equipment to support the kids to learn. Now, everything else you can work around. You know, whether you call the thing 2633 or you call it 844 or you call it 763, it doesn't really matter. The curriculum is just the organization of the delivery. Now, what we need to think about is that our kids learning the right material that is going to prepare them for jobs that cannot even be named today. Are they learning for the future? The most critical skills about critical thinking, critical evaluation, communication, empathy, teamwork, and all of these things. And how do we transmit this alongside the technical cognitive skills that are needed? So I think what I would expect, and as you said, a lot of these things will come to full light when the president unveils his cabinet, when you see the men and women who will be charged with responsibilities of executing these things. Keys, agriculture, health, education, finance, treasury, enterprise, industry. We haven't even talked about manufacturing, because we're talking about jobs.
Yes.
Where will jobs come from?
And one of the things I'll come back to you, Prof. Awiti, to talk about is how the president will manage, will streamline the economy with the politics of this country as well. I'll come back to you for that. But for you, Joy, we are in a country that now has a debt level somewhere between 9 trillion to 10 trillion, about 67% of our GDP. 70% of our GDP. I beg your pardon on that. What are your proposals for that debt? Because whoever becomes new Treasury CS, I expect that is something they will talk to us about. We have large infrastructure projects that are said to be major contributor to this debt. We have, lenders who we owe, who we cannot stop. So in terms of solutions, what thoughts would you have around that? Were you hoping to hear more about that as well today?
Now, I'm on record on this same station saying that Kenya cannot afford to take any more debt, and more so, we cannot afford to take some of these commercial loans. It's just out of the question. If you're going to be taking any debt, maybe concessional loans, but most importantly, if we can find a way to consolidate our debt, if we can find a way to do that, debt consolidation, debt restructuring, and definitely backed up by strong fiscal consolidation measures. That is the only way that this country can escape from what is awaiting us if one wrong move by this new government and the whole economy could crumble. I want to say that they are inheriting an economy not strong, not better, definitely, but I want to describe it as delicate.
A
very delicate economy, such that if they keep the old habits of buying new cars for the new officers, new furniture, unnecessary, a lot of wastage. If they stick to those old habits, they're going to mess up the economy very easily, just like this. If they go on a big procurement, if they want to provide actual goods and services to mwananchi, if they want to subsidize and give everything for free, this economy will not work. It will burst in a minute like this. So they're inheriting a very delicate economy. And the more they are aware of that, the more they can make informed choices and ensure that the policies they make, they are well calculated, and most importantly, since they don't have a lot of physical room, there is a private sector that only needs to be given the right incentives, and they can continue creating jobs. They can continue providing some of these goods and services that the common people want, while the government concentrates on strengthening the economy, creating more space for development spending, while the private sector is empowered enough. But some of these things like subsidies for this and that, bringing down the cost of this, it will not be done like saying we are going to subsidize. It will not work. They try that, the economy will just burst. So the hard work starts now. There are no shortcuts, Kenyans. I'm sorry, but it takes time, and we must be willing. We must be willing to give this government space and not pressurize so much asking for free things. And another mistake that they made, I was actually surprised that we spent about 7 billion on the unga subsidy, right? What was the impact? But most importantly, Maura, where would you and I want subsidized maize when there are people who are starving out there who can't even reach out to where these shops are? Why? I mean, the point is that targeting was done wrongly. The people who are hungry did not receive the food. And even those that received, 2-3 days of unga in the supermarket, what difference? And just like that, 7 billion is gone. I think that was a huge waste. And the lessons for this government is, it is not the way to go. They should just be honest with the people and tell them, this is the situation. The economy is delicate. Give us time as we strengthen it. But meanwhile, strengthen other ways to make Kenyans busy working, make it easy for Kenyans to work, that is, start the enterprises, others to create jobs, so that Kenyans are busy with their day-to-day lives. It's easy to start a business, it's easy, and then they should also use their influence to acquire new export destination within the East Africa. It's now big. It's now a big market. Because the idea is, you keep saying that agriculture is not productive, but show farmers the money. The moment you show farmers where the money is in agriculture, you will not talk twice about productivity. People will find ways to invest in agriculture as long as there is the money. So we need innovations, simple innovations that can add value to our agricultural produce. And we need to reach out. First and foremost, starting with the East Africa community is now bigger than it was before. Reach out and find new markets for these value-added products from Kenya. Unless such measures are put, this idea of serikali tupatia hii, serikali punguza hii. And another thing is the issue of risk. This one, some Kenyans will stone me, but Kenyans, let us say, our culture is supposed to empower us, to free us, and to make us better people. That is what our culture is supposed to be. Our culture is not supposed to burden us and be an economic burden to us. Tell me, every week, you're in how many WhatsApp groups contributing for money? From burial, to sickness, to weddings, to I'm visiting my mother. All these kind of groups. It's our culture. But the truth is, we can make our culture easier on us by embracing risk managers. Surely, if we give incentives to the insurance industry, they will develop products that can help you marry the girl you want without burdening everybody with a contribution. They will develop products that will enable you handle.
Prof has really smiled at that example.
Yeah, that will make you handle a burial. We saw that a burial doesn't have to be that expensive during the COVID period. People were buried, and it was very cheap, and it went well.
I get the sense innovation will make a key difference. I'm looking at the clock here, so I want to allow Prof one last word here. Prof, there have been accusations that previous governments had great plans, that we've had plans time and again, but they were derailed for one reason or the other. Sometimes we're told it's politics, sometimes we're told it's something else. How does this government get down to work and focus? And how does it mitigate against possible derailing from, political allies who felt they were not given what they wanted. And I know you speak politics sometimes. That's why I've directed this question to you and not to Joy.
Sometimes I speak politics. And I think here is the point. You're right in your observation that previous governments have been derailed by politics. But as you can see, the president starts off with a huge burden of debt, political and financial. The colleagues who came, and you could see the way that the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Senate and the deputies were elected. And now you'll see committees and all of that. This is the reward season. You probably have in some WhatsApp groups that are sharing speculations about the cabinet lineup and etc. And you can see where it's going. And then, as Irungu said before he left, there was the feast at the State House today, and it's not who is who. It is who brought what, who showed up there. Primarily in terms of the business and political class, basically aligning to shake hands, make contacts, etc. So this is the biggest issue, and how the president is going to navigate this. He did not come to this solemn stage today to take a solemn oath on his own wings. He has relied on the generosity and material sacrifice of many Kenyans. And a lot of them believe that they're owed a debt. Now, how does he sort this out? He needs to square with them and tell them that I'm going to bake the cake for all of us and you guys find your space in there. Now, the cabinet is not a place where you reward your friends. The cabinet is where you appoint men and women that you can hold accountable to deliver for you. Now, as soon as the political interests take over government, where we now create these ethnic fiefdoms, where this person represents the interests of the Meru, of the Nyeri people, of Kisumu, of Murang'a, of Garissa, of Mandera, etc., then you're in trouble. And now that's how corruption is basically going to seep in. That state capture that DP Gachagua talks about is going to happen because of these debts that are owed. And basically what everybody's saying is that we work so hard. And you've seen the conversations already where, for instance, Sudi has been very clear, has basically said that there are people who should not be anywhere near the table where the cake is being shared because they came too late. What does that mean? Came too late for what? Came too late, didn't put what on the table. Now, that kind of situation is just going to basically make the president's job very difficult. So how he navigates that and how he chooses that cabinet and how he starts to call the tone from the top and basically rally his troops to deliver on the 65 things that he outlined today in the next 100 days is going to be absolutely critical. So we hope that the politics and the financial debt that is owed to many individuals does not derail his agenda.
I like the way you've put it. A parting shot. Let's get a final word. Joy, let me start with you. And as you give your final word, you could also tell Kenyans from an economic perspective, from where you sit, what should they anticipate between now and December, that proverbial next 100 or first 100 days? Can you give any predictions?
Okay. What I can say is that the first 100 days, no magic will happen. Money will not just get into your pocket because now William Ruto is president. But the first 100 days, you should be able to judge or to see for yourself whether the government is going to take you to the right direction in terms of solving the issues and unemployment. Cost of living, then the next 100 days is enough to start seeing the impact in terms of cost of living. So in the next 100, I can only assure you, you'll be having a signal where we are heading. But in terms of a miracle happening and then all of a sudden things are all roses for you, it's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. But nevertheless, there should be, in the next 100 days, there should be enough space for you to work, if at all they're doing the right things, to be able to start your business, to be able to manage your hustle. The first 100 days is enough to put policies that can enable Kenyans do that. If that is not happening, then know that we will not be heading the right direction.
Some tough words told with a bit of a smile there. They're tough words nevertheless. Prof, your parting shot?
So my parting shot is...
and you could be your prediction as well.
Yes, it's first to congratulate the president on his swearing in today, but also to really thank Kenyans for a very peaceful process. And I think this was said many, many times by the dignitaries that were visiting. And I thought about it and I said, this sounds really odd, that people come here to thank us for being peaceful. That we've always been associated with violence around every election. 2007, 1992, 2013, 2018. And this is the first time that there's a transition. But we need to remember that every time there's a transition from one president to another, when there's not an incumbent on the ticket, our elections have been peaceful. So we need to remember that. In 2002, it was very peaceful. In 2013, it was peaceful. And again now, so there's a consistent record here. So what we need now to hold the President Ruto accountable for is to give us a peaceful transition, a peaceful election in 2027. So as Joy has said, is to tell Kenyans to fasten their seatbelt, hold tight. We're getting into turbulence. It is not, and they got to temper down the expectations. And the president has got to be a communicator in chief. And he has to look at Kenyans in the eyes every single day and tell them that he is working really hard at solving the problems that he committed in his manifesto, and he's working down the list of the 65 issues that he highlighted today as his priority. And just as Deputy President Gachagua said, we're looking at this is for the long haul. It's going to take more than 2 years for us to basically stabilize things. Joy has basically said there's a slew of policies and regulations that need to be changed. The president has talked about low-cost housing. One of the biggest issues that actually puts an upward pressure on the cost of housing is because of poor land administration. The cost of land is extremely high. And it is a murky, opaque space. And that really jacks up the price for housing, for instance. So when we talk about affordable housing, what is a public-private partnership arrangement? As Ajoy has basically said, government should not exist to sustain itself. And a large fiscal burden in terms of spending recurrent expenditure is going to be a huge problem for this government. We've talked about the cabinet, the CASs. Is the president bold enough to basically face up to his political supporters and say, not under my watch? There will be a principal secretary and a cabinet secretary, period. And I'm going to make government extremely lean. Some of the government departments have like 5 PSs. Now he has to basically tell Kenyans that this is going to be business, it's not going to be business as usual. We've got to live within our means. And for Kenyans who are waiting out there, these 800 to 900,000 Kenyans who will be getting into the job market next year, it is going to be tough before it gets better.
Wow. It's going to be tough before it gets better. Let me thank my high-level panel once again, my guests who've taken time to be here with us. I know it's been a long day for many of you watching Citizen TV and our sister stations from all, 6 o'clock in the morning till now. But many thanks to Joy Kiro, an economist. Thank you for coming to weigh in on our discussion this evening. And of course, Professor Alex Awiti, a policy analyst. And a bit earlier on, we had Irungu Houghton, who's the executive director of Amnesty International. What a day it's been. That historic gathering at the Kasarani International Stadium. Historic because I doubt many African countries have seen as many heads of state as we did today. And of course, a lot of excitement and optimism in the air about the future. But the experts are warning us, tighten your belt. Have I used the right expression? Fasten your belt. There could be heady days ahead. The global economy is struggling. We know what our local economy has been like. And so there's quite some work to be done by the new government. And we are waiting to see what decisions they'll make, even in terms of naming those who lead key dockets, key ministries. And of course, here on Citizen TV, we'll be giving you more and more updates on that as and when we get them. But for now, this is where we wrap up the program. Thank you once again to my guests. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in from Kenya, East Africa, or around the world. On behalf of the whole team that's made this broadcast possible this evening, we say asante sana. My sign language interpreter has been Joki Shege. Let me say good night. We'll see you soon. Goodbye for now. My name is Wahiga Mwaura.